So I've safely made it to my hotel room. I'm on the Luxembourg-Belgium border for the next week, and then I move to the German-Netherlands border for next week. But anyway, so I promised you I would do another video whilst I was on the road. So I travelled in through Germany, Luxembourg and into Belgium yesterday. And it was a good old trip, I have to say, although the weather today is thundery here where I am in Belgium. So thank you to those who have already sent in some comments on the little things that S1000D projects get wrong. I just want to talk about some of the things that I see clients doing wrong when it comes to selecting software. And I'll talk specifically about S1000D, but this pretty much can be applied to any kind of technical publications type software that we would want to purchase. Now, this is a huge part of what I do. I help companies select the right tools and implement the right processes for them. So I'm not going to give away all of my crown jewels on this one, but I am going to give you some of the key things that I think will help you make the right decisions if you're not using somebody like TDW to help you make the right decisions. Today I took a little bit of downtime, and I always like to go and see some places when I'm out and about, and today I went to a couple of local cemeteries. One was a German war cemetery and one was the US military war cemeteries. I'll put a little B-roll up on this, but I'm going to create another video for that, which is going to be non-tech docs, but it's going to talk about the cemeteries and where I am and or where I was today. Heavens have opened now, so I'm just going over my slides one more time for my training that starts tomorrow, and making sure that I'm fully prepared for that. So what kind of things do I see, or do I suggest to my clients that they need to understand about selecting a software solution for their organization? And one of the big problems is that sometimes I see organizations trying to mend and make do. What I mean by that is that they are trying, they see the price tag associated with something like S1000D software, and they think, well, what we can do is we can bend and mend and make do with commercial off-the-shelf tools that are affordable, like structured editors and those kind of things. And then what we'll do is we'll make our own little file system, or we'll make our own little access controlled type database. Invariably, this goes wrong. And there are lots of reasons why sticking with commercial off-the-shelf software is a sensible solution. And I'm not going to talk about that in this video because I think I've written articles about that before. So what I say to my clients first and foremost is take price off the table and focus on functionality and capability. That way, what you can do is you can then have a commercial discussion and negotiation with your chosen vendors later on when you decide which tools you want to use. The amount of times I've gone into an organization where somebody has developed an in-house tool where the guys that developed it have either long retired or left, or the technology it was based on is no longer supported, and now they're having to reinvest a whole load of time, energy and money into identifying a good solid solution. So that's number one. Don't forget that what software we're buying today may not necessarily be appropriate in 5, 10, 15 years time. And the reality is technology moves along at a rapid pace. And it's always important to keep an eye on what's going on in the market, which is one of the reasons why I invented TDW, was that we help educate you on what's happening in the market. But it's also important to keep an eye on what's happening in terms of specifications, what's happening in terms of technology, AR, VR, AI, those kind of things. Always have a clear vision on what's happening and how that might affect your technical publications department in a couple of years' time. And does that mean that every 2, 3, 5 years we have to think about the tools that we're using and how we're using them, and how do we easily upgrade and migrate to something that can support maybe tablet technology or something along those lines. Although tablet technology now is already getting a bit dated. There are better and easier ways that we can produce our content, which we'll talk about. When we get down to selecting our solutions providers, say we've gone through a PQQ, an RFI, an RFQ, and we've gone through this whole analysis phase, and maybe we've had some web demos and that kind of stuff. What I always suggest from the highest level is make sure that you workshop at least the last two selected vendors that you think are going to be a good fit for your organization. Now, this is important. One, if you workshop a vendor, you get to see the whites of their eyes in your organization, and you also get to see their technology, and if it fails, and you can ask questions. We did a demo once, I can't mention the company, we did a demo once for a client, and we asked 4 vendors to come in and workshop over, I think it was over 4 days, 5 days maybe. And the vendors that really knew their stuff were the ones that really impressed the client, and today that client is being successful with that software. Being able to ask questions off the cuff and seeing if the vendor can answer those questions quickly and easily is really important. But add to that as well, don't fall into this purchase because the system holds and hosts and can manage the S1000D bike data. You want to see real data in there. What I would suggest is that you have a demo pack of your data, you give it to the vendors and say, this is the data set that we want you to come into us and we want you to demonstrate around. And that way you can ask them to put data modules through a workflow, through a QA process, through a validation process, all of these things. You can see your data working in the way that it should work. Now, if you don't have S1000D data, I know that if down selected, that there are a couple of organizations out there that will actually do a conversion for you as part of the demo. So, ask those questions. Don't be frightened to ask those questions. But always workshop on site, even if you've got to go on site to them, to sit and go through the software in face-to-face environment. Don't just rely on web demos. If you're investing a 6-figure sum in an infrastructural piece of software, you want to be sure that it works. And the best way to do that is get the best brains from your organization in a room for a few days and workshop the content, the software and the content within that software. Very important. I am blown away by how many people actually don't ask about support and maintenance. 2 different things. Some people don't even know that they are 2 different things. Now, maintenance contracts and support contracts over a very short period of time are going to cost you as much as when you actually originally had the outlay for the software. Software, it's done thing in the market that you are charged support and maintenance for the maintenance of your environment and to answer any questions that you might have around the use of the software. And for support, sometimes you may be in a position where you're only being offered a certain amount of hours of support, or you're only allowed to ask certain level of questions and then you're expected to have training. You've got to be really sure you understand the small print when it comes to the support and maintenance packages. In terms of maintenance, you could be paying anything from, I've seen it actually quite surprised, I've seen one client who's charging 15% or paying 15% on a maintenance contract. But you could be paying all the way up to 30-35% of the MSRP price for your software. And like I said, over 2 years already you are caught back up with what you've already paid for the software. So make sure you read the small print, make sure you understand what the support maintenance contracts include and don't include. If something like S1000D changes, how quickly Will they and are they obliged to update for you so that you can have access to that? What versions of S1000D do they support forward and back? What kind of workflow packages do they have? And do they have a service level agreement? I.e., if the software stops and you are no longer productive, what is the turnaround time for answers, on-site support, those kind of things? Vitally important. So what else have I got for you? Don't read the small print I've said today. I've already talked about how software and technology changes all of the time. Making sure you workshop any selected software vendor is vitally important. You have to do that. Make sure that outside of the support and maintenance and service level agreements, you read the license agreements. And if you are not a legal beagle and you don't get somebody in your organization or pay somebody that can actually read those license agreements, and you can figure out very quickly any restrictions that might be placed on you, especially when it comes round to producing interactive manuals and deploying interactive manuals, and concurrency of access, or whether it's named user access to the software. These kind of things you need to understand, because you can get burned very quickly if you are incorrectly using and deploying the software that's in breach of your license agreement. I was involved many years ago now where it was apparent that a user quite innocently was deploying interactive manuals left, right and centre, and what they didn't realise is they were only limited to a certain number of users and deployments that they were allowed, and that then turned into quite a big discussion commercially between legal departments. So just make sure you understand that license agreement as well as those SLAs and support and maintenance and that kind of stuff. Always outside of all of the down selection and workshopping and that stuff, if your budget allows it, and if you're going to be spending 2, 3, 4, 500,000 US on a infrastructural piece of software, why wouldn't you take a couple of $1,000s and go and visit some reference sites and speak to people who are actually working with the vendor that you've chosen or you wish to work with? Because one of the big things that I see, and one of the biggest complaints, is the ability to support. And we are in a very small market, we're in a very niche market, and we all talk to each other. And one of the first things I do when I go into an organization is I ask them what tools they're using, and then I'll ask them, how are you getting on with that? And 99.9% of the time they say, when it works it's great, and then we can't get support. And you need to decide whether working directly with the software vendor yourself is important to you, what time zone they're in, what their turnaround time is, SLAs, or are you dealing with a third party, a systems integrator, a reseller? And sometimes resellers are nothing more than message takers. They will just go off and ask the actual owners what the problem is and maybe get you answers like that. Big issue is that if you've purchased a piece of software that's in one time zone and you're having a problem and you're in another time zone, sometimes you can lose 2 or 3 days or even more just trying to get answers. And we're not in a position where we can have technical authors or project managers sat around doing nothing while we're wasting lots of time and energy trying to get software to work or waiting on answers. So make sure you understand where that support's coming from in terms of the software that you're buying. So get those references, go and speak to people, ask them the difficult questions, and always remember you'll always be shown the references that are the good references. So be prepared for daisies and roses, because that's what you'll get. But do ask around and get those answers to those questions. So I've already mentioned it as well. Make sure you see the software with your data in it, and it's working with your data and your illustrations and how you want things being published. The thing that I spend a lot of time on my training courses teaching is, understanding where S1000D stops and technology takes over. I think I mentioned that on the video last week. Now, what's really important is that you understand the technology stack that is in the system that you are buying, especially when it comes around to hosting a CSDB, or whether it's deploying an interactive manual. Is it HTML5? Is it a bespoke viewing environment? Can it support certain graphic styles and formats? Any animations, that kind of stuff. Really understand the technology stack that's behind the software, because there's nothing worse, and I've seen it happen, where somebody invests in an ecosystem and an eco-structure. They go to publish something, they say, great, let's load this up, and it won't load because there's a whole load of IT restrictions, or because the viewers itself doesn't support what it is you're trying to achieve. See your data in the viewer, see your data being published, and make sure that it works the way you want it to work. Understand that technology stack. And normally, technology stacks, I would always recommend to involve the IT department, because the IT department have a different perspective on the world, and they know what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, and they can ask all sorts of questions as well around the technology stack. So part of an RFI or an RFQ process, I would always ask, what is the technology stack? Are you reliant on any third-party tools? If you're reliant on any third-party tools, who's supporting them? What happens if they go out of business? What happens if they're no longer made available to you? And we've seen this in the past. And anybody who was around when a major software company was bought out by a larger software company and they shut down the development around certain pieces of software, it caused a huge problem. So do that. Make sure that you understand the technology stack, and you run your data right the way through to the end, start to end, and be prepared to ask lots of very difficult questions. Technology stack. So where I spend a lot of my time is aligning what S1000D requires, what your organization needs, and how S1000D can support both of those. So you need to be able to reconcile the triangle, is what I say. Is you need to say, okay, S1000D says we have to do this. Our organization says we have to do this, and we must be able to deliver this. What's the best software solution to do that? And a lot of projects, a lot of organizations aren't able to reconcile S1000D to organizational and customer needs to the S1000D software that's out there available off the market. So those are the things that I would say. Like I said, I've got a list of about 50 things that I go through with my clients, and I'm not going to give those crown jewels away. And just make sure that if you are investing, I use a term when I'm advising software companies. I say when I'm advising software sales guys, you have to remember that people are making career-changing decisions around investing in pieces of software. And if that software starts letting people down, they're in a world of pain, they're in a world of hurt, and often I have seen career trajectories change because bad decisions have been made. So that's it. What would make your list? Let me know. And make sure you download our app, get access to our TDW magazine. We're starting to release now the agendas for TDW Live. So I know that we're way ahead on numbers on what we've had for the last few years. So looking forward to bringing that this year. Yeah, download the app, register for TDW Live, get access to the magazine, subscribe, like, share, send me your comments. And I'm Michael Ingledew, and I'm all about making you successful with your technical documentation and information strategies. That's it. Until the next one, see you soon.